All right, let's knock this mother out. As the great LL Cool J once said, Mama said knock you out. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com, your source for FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. They got all the new stuff in for the national teams for Copa America and Euro 24, all the big guns. As a Third Degree listener, get 20% off your discount code in store. Simply mention Third Degree, or online with the code Third Degree at checkout. 20% off. Some exclusions may apply. Third Degree, the podcast, is also brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm for wills, trust, probates, and business law. Call 469-515-2559 or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. This one numbered 263, I am told. Hello, me, Peter. That there is the pour one out for Luton, newly relegated Dan Crooke. Sorry, Dan.
There's still a chance. We just have to win 7-0 and hope that Burnley beat Nottingham Forest 6-0, and then we're fine.
You'll be just fine. Man, I was rooting for the Hatters all season long. You know that, right, Dan?
Yeah, it's harder to take. If we'd lost all 38 games, I don't think anyone would have cared, but it's the hope that gets you, right?
It's every time. All I know is that if there's any kind of shiny silver lining to this is that hopefully it makes it easier for me to go to a game at Kenilworth Road sometime next season. So
yeah, because it doesn't look like new stadiums happening anytime soon.
Oh, really? Has it been delayed too?
It's been delayed for 70 years. So, yeah.
One of those things. I get it.
Yeah.
All right, and then of course your hero, my hero, everybody's hero. Editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hey, fellas, I'd like to announce that there's a new member of my household as of this week. Amy and I adopted a dog Monday from a shelter. So, yeah.
Will a photo of said new puppy dog be the cover art of this episode?
He might if we can get a good picture. He's still got a giant cone on his head from his,
Oh, the snip.
His snip. So other than that, at some point I'll get a picture of him and share it on the pod or whatever.
Come on, a good old cone of shame photo is not a bad way to introduce a dog to the world, you know?
All right, I'll see what I can do.
What kind of dog is it?
An Australian cattle dog, of course.
Of course.
Nice.
And what is its name?
Well, that is still in process. It has not been decided.
Okay, hold on. I feel like this is a contest for the curious. I think Buzz and Amy need to let the curious name the new Third Degree puppy dog.
Well, I've picked out what I want to call him, but Amy's not as convinced.
That means you need a tiebreaker, which is the curious.
Okay.
Specifically Patreon subscribers. So get your dollar in.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, if you've paid money somewhere in the Discord, we need to start a new channel that is come up with a name for Buzz's new dog.
Yeah, take suggestions. Yeah, fair. Okay.
No, they get, and then once we have a collection, the curious get to vote and decide on what it is, and you and Amy have to adhere to this decision.
I don't think we want to let that happen. I think we're going to pick the name. Yeah.
Boo! Boo!
Yeah. Are you going to put your next corgi up for Patreon renaming?
No, I don't get paid. I don't get anything from the Patreon. This is your bit. Nobody cares. And by the way, my two dogs are really old, and once they're gone, I think we're going to go dogless for some time.
Oh, that's it? No.
Yeah.
Corgis, though.
I know. I love a corgi. What color? Is it a blue merle?
Mostly blue, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's got a little bit of red, a very raccoon-looking face. So, like, the suggestions so far are like Rocky or Rocket. I'm going with Trash Panda, so I want to call him Trash. So we're working on the names.
Dog names have to be 2 syllables, Buzz.
Do they?
Oh, yeah, for training purposes. That's well documented.
Well,
researched.
Rocky and Rocket are 2, both syllables.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway.
More importantly, consider the nicknames that you will give the dog that are not its name.
Yeah. Well, I'm not actually going to call him Trash, but maybe Panda. We thought about Po from Kung Fu Panda, but that might be too short.
Can I make a topical, historic, 2-syllable suggestion that I think applies very well?
Yeah.
Tedek.
Tedek? I don't think we're naming him Tedek.
Yeah. My wife has a dog name exercise to test if a dog name is good. You say the name in a loud, angry, scolding voice. So if the dog's name is Rocky, you go, Rocky! You see how that sounds. And sometimes it sounds really good. Other times you're like, oh, no, that doesn't sound good when I'm angry. So, Tedek! See, that doesn't work very well. So
No, that doesn't work.
So that's how you decide.
Yeah. That's how you decide.
This has been informative.
Well, you don't want it to be fluffy. You can't say fluffy.
No,
That
it's
sounds
not gonna be
ridiculous.
fluffy. No, it's not going to be fluffy.
All right. Well, welcome to the family, unnamed new Carrick dog, third-degree dog.
I can call him third degree, I guess. That won't be confusing at all.
Third degree the dog.
How about just degree?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, third degree the dog is the official name.
A secondary word mark or
Keep
something.
the branding going. Yeah.
Degree. No, that doesn't work. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we've done everything we can to avoid talking about the actual football team known as FC Dude, because it's one of those weird conversations, Buzz, as it is FC Dude 2, FC bunch of other dudes 1. In a game that was not very exciting, but had one moment of capitalizing on opportunities handed to you, and another actual quality soccer moment out of the good guys. And at least it's a win, and we don't want to be too dismissive of it, right?
Yeah, well, in terms of the game, Dallas got dominated in every statistical category except the one that actually matters, which is goals. And, the way this team likes to play and tends to play, which is relatively defensive and relatively sitting back, with their little quick counters they like to do, it sort of played into their hands. And we've talked all along about how the bulk of this team is a bunch of dudes, and the guys that were special had not been being special. And until this game came along, and Jesus and Peter Musa both did things that were special, and they got goals, and that's how you win games in Major League Soccer. It's a prototypical example of what the difference between when your important guys show up and play really well, and when they don't, which is what the previous couple of games they had looked flat and passive and had nothing special at all. And this game, all of a sudden, they had 2 guys, and so they won the game.
It's as simple as that, winning the game.
It really is.
But, I'm just saying, it is one of those deals where I don't want to be too lemon about this, sourpussed about this, but they won the game, but there's still all the other signs and indicators that there's a lot of problems with this team.
Yeah, Oscar used to say that when you're evaluating how you played, you have to ignore the actual goals, because there's too many things that can cause a goal or be a fluke goal or can influence you not getting a goal. You have to analyze the play conceptually. And if you're trying to be entertaining and you're trying to sell tickets and you're trying to put a business on the field, this is not very pretty. But on the other hand, like walking out of the gate, a guy 10 feet away from me is like, man, that's the best I've seen them play all season. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that was a horrible game. What are you watching? But they won. And the bottom line is, winning cures a lot of ills. Now you have to be able to produce it game after game after game. That's the trick. Like, what were you doing that would lead you to be able to do it again? And, with this coach, obviously, at a certain point in the game, you're looking at 7 defenders out there and 1 midfielder and a couple of attackers. And they did the things that they do well, which was when Austin would make a mistake, they capitalized on the mistake. And they played quickly in transition, and their 2 best players on the field at that moment passed to each other to get the second goal. And in the first goal, they did a little counter press off of a bad misplay from Musa. And coach, by the way, said that they came out in a 4-3-3, which I didn't spot at all. And he credited that to how come Musa intercepted that pass, because Austin wasn't expecting it. I didn't see a 4-3-3 out there myself, but I'll take him in his word, at least that they started that way. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is, like, the both of those goals are prototypical goals that this club has produced over the last 3 years. Maybe it's a great idea that you make Jesus captain, because all of a sudden he feels more responsibility and he feels a little more dialed in. Of course, we're not real happy to see Aramendi go off the field at halftime, but there are still so many things wrong with this team in terms of how the roster is built for the shape that the team doesn't play, and in terms of how many roster fillers they just have versus how many guys that are special that they have. Some of whom are injured and out for a long time. Some of whom are just underperforming. There's still a lot of things going on. But when you need victories and you're desperate for victories and you get a victory, sometimes you just have to take it and say, you know what, we'll take that one. Can we do that? What got us that win? Can we capitalize on that? Can we do more things like that? Can Jesus and Musa be dialed in together? And can we play tight defense? And they probably can do that. So they'll grind out. They're 1 point out of the playoffs. No 1 point. 1 spot off the playoffs now. And they're going to continue to grind. This game will reinforce to this coach that the grind is working.
Here's the thing. We're going to have to take this season in the little bits of gold that we can get and just enjoy those for those moments as best we can. That's how this season more than likely is going to play itself out, because as you mentioned in this, the big problem is the obvious elephant in the room that I suspect you're going to get more into when you start talking about what you saw at training today in terms of injuries.
Yep.
Which is the most critical player on this team going out at halftime again. We're not even 10 games into the season, and now I have a feeling, Buzz, you're going to tell us that for the second time this season, we're going to end up missing this most critical player for another extended period of time.
I don't know how extended it'll be, but yes, you're certainly going to be missing this player. And look, we've talked about how great Yaramendi is, but we've also talked about how he's 34. And every time we talk about that, people are like, why are you complaining that he's 34? He can still play. Well, this is why we're complaining that he's 34. When you're in your 30s, recovery is slower, injuries happen more frequently. It's a fundamental rule of life that this starts to happen to you. There are exceptions. There are guys that are so insanely fit, freaks of nature. Cristiano Ronaldo is a great example of a guy that is so insanely fit that these kinds of fall-offs don't happen to him. But to 99% of us in the world, these fall-offs happen. To 99.9% of players, these fall-offs happen. And it's inevitable. You can look at Areola as he gets really close to 30. Look at Leggett after he crossed over to 31, 32. It just happens. Credit, by the way, to Sebastian Urbiaga, who's remarkably, knock on wood, able to play game after game after game, despite the fact he's in his 30s now. So you just have to expect it. You have to know it, and it's going to happen. You have to make it part of your plan, and you have to have ways to get around it or solve it or know how you're going to get through it. The ones you can't count on are the guys that are in their mid-20s that this is happening to. Yet if it happens so often that it becomes a trend, you also need to recognize that. And that's the combination of those things is what's really killing them.
Yes, and again, not to beat a dead horse, the problem is the backup plan was Paxton Pomykal, Liam Frazier, and Delgado.
Yeah, look, Delgado and Liam Frazier are solid sixes, but in this shape, when you're playing 4 across the midfield and 2 of those guys are wingbacks who are not particularly ball savvy, dribblers, possessors, holders, line breakers, those kinds of guys make it more important for your 2 guys in the middle to not be like pure ball winning sixes. They need to be able to pass and connect and play out. And that's why the first tier plan was Yaramendi and Paxton together. There wasn't going to be a pure 6 in there. And now we're seeing games where it's Frazier and Delgado together. Liam Frazier is a much, much better passer when Yaramendi's in there because he's much more confident in terms of being able to combine and pass with people. So it is what it is at this point. We're just going to have to deal with it, and the club's going to have to deal with it.
Do you have any opinions or thoughts about the fact that he started Ensebling for a second time in a row as one of the 2 10s?
Yeah, I thought about that. My thought on that is that he had a comment about Jesus has to remember that Jesus is a 9.5. That he wants him to be up next to Musa a bunch, making those runs into the box and not playing, as Jesus is often tending to do, deeper into midfield and dropping back where he almost is like a 6 or an 8. So when he plays a player in that third position of the front group, when he plays a guy over there like an Ansa or like a Logo in Farrington, then Jesus tends to react more I'm the 10, I'm going to drop in underneath. Whereas if he plays a guy like Seeking in that other hole, that tells Jesus subconsciously or consciously, oh yeah, I am the high guy. Seeky's going to be underneath. So I think it's really important that they play a person in that position that's not an out-and-out striker, that is a guy who is almost 10-like midfielder, whether it be Areola or Leggett or Siki. With both Leggett and Areola hurt, Siki in college was a high false wing or attacking midfielder. Siki in this last game had 3 muffed pass receptions, and he had 3 times he was dispossessed. That was 6 turnovers from him on those 2 categories, and the next highest person had 2. But because it was so high up the field, it doesn't hurt them as bad as it does when he does it at the top of the 18-yard box when he's playing like as a 6 or an 8. So, I think that adjustment, having that kind of player there, that player of that nature, makes Jesus be the higher player he needs to be, and thus Jesus plays better. And that way, you also, it being Siki in this case, you can mitigate that turnover issue.
Well, it is interesting. I don't think Austin is a particularly good team. I was sitting here looking at their starting 11 and trying to pick out, as much as we've picked apart Dallas's roster over the course of the year, I'm trying to figure out how many of these guys you would love to have to replace somebody in the Dallas roster. And obviously, I think some people there's maybe a couple of guys that stand out, Buzz, but I'm interested if there's anybody other than the obvious ones. And the reason why this is an interesting exercise is, again, because we've spent a lot of time picking on the Dallas roster, but, MLS is a league of parity. And when I look at this, I go, oh, you know what? Austin's roster really, at least the 11 they threw out there as a starting 11, isn't all that great after all.
Well, I would take Ring right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just because of the injury problems that they're having. I actually have been a fan of his for a long time. And I actually think that this is one of those simple things that when I watched Austin, admittedly from afar, I watched them have that great first season when Ring was the midfielder. And then last year, they made Ring a center back, and they were dog shit.
Right.
And then this year, they've made him a central midfielder again. And prior to this game, they were like in, 4th or 5th place. So, Stuver can be solid in net. Pereira has some stuff from time to time. I think he's a pretty good player. But, that's the thing is, like, most of their dudes are just about
dudes.
the same dudes like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And it's about the special guys. It's about Driussi being a good player for them. It's about Ring in midfield being a good player for them. When he's on, Diego Rubio is a pretty good player for them. Again, it's always about that. It's always about, unless you're LAFC and you've got a whole bunch of guys, or if you saw Miami's salary today where they have $41 million in salary and they got a whole bunch of special players, everybody else is a bunch of dudes and 3, 4, 5 special players. Mm-hmm. And how good are your special players is everything in this league.
Hey, who is this Jader O'Brien?
O'Brien?
Yeah, I've never seen this guy before. Who's this?
He looked exactly the same as he always did.
Cowbell always going to be cowbell?
Yeah, cowbell going to be cowbell. Among dudes, he is a great guy to have around your locker room. I never really had any complaints about him for what he was and the price he was. We talked about at the time how when they signed Ansa, that was the death knell on Oberon because he was going to take his spot in terms of roster build and functionality. They made that choice, so it is. I mean, I was fine with Oberon for that. Off the bench starting him is a problem. That's not good.
Yeah. Well, Dallas 2, Austin 1. It's always fun to beat up on the broccoli, especially when they're starting to feel their oats again.
I believe they've never won in Dallas, if I understand that correctly. Could be wrong about that, but I think that's true.
Is that right? I think you're right, Buzz.
That's right, yeah.
Because they hadn't actually beaten Dallas in a game up until, was it last season?
I mean, Dallas has had a lot of hay, the
playoff game
against them. And they've had some pretty decisive wins down in Austin even, but Dallas was 3-0-1 going into that game at home. So now 4-0-1.
Okay. Well, there you go. The other thing that I thought we'd want to move into before we got into some of the other topics was training today, which then gets into the injury report, which obviously Larramendi is unfortunately a participant in. Yeah,
Larramendi will be out 7 to 10 days, Coach told me. So he was actually outside doing some rehab and running. So I'll take him at his word that that's true because he wasn't completely shut down. That if he's really that quickly back into the action outside, then that probably is correct. That 7 to 10 days. That keeps him out though for this weekend and likely the Open Cup game, I think. Sebastian Leggett is back in training, but Sebastian Leggett, coach says will not start. He's usually pretty locked in, coaches, on this. Your first game back, you're not really going to start because they'll want to control his minutes. So likely like a 30, 35 minute battle for him. I'm guessing Leggett, which is a shame because they're really going to need him as they go forward here. Areola was on the side also, but is really close. But I'm told he'll return to training full time on Tuesday, so he won't be available this weekend. And then the other one, the new one that is a worry, is Liam Frazier is now out 2 to 3 weeks. Right. So no Leggett, no Areola, no Frazier, no Yaramendi, no Paxton. Your only central midfielders available are Siki, Delgado, Nolan Norris, Carl Sante. Those two of those four guys are going to have to start against Houston on the road against Hector Herrera.
Man, I'd love to see Nolan Norris running around kicking at Hector Herrera's ankles.
It would be fun, but I'm sure it'll be. I mean, just because of the way this coach works, surely it's going to be Siki and Delgado in that double midfield road.
Well, who? Okay.
Yeah, and then because you'll end up having to use probably somebody like Ansa or Bernie as your other forward, which means, of course, that Jesus will do what Jesus does and drift back into midfield. So that might not be horrible for this one, but I don't. As a general rule, I don't like that idea because of what we talked about. The way Jesus will automatically turn himself into a midfielder.
What is Frazier's injury to be out for 3 weeks?
I don't know. I didn't think to ask. I think I was too busy picking up my jaw off the floor, realizing who was available, that I forgot to actually ask what his injury was. I think coach actually said 2. I think I'm adding the 3 in order, just because everything is always longer than they say it is going to be. So, because he on Wednesday he said 2 weeks. Okay, does that really mean, does he mean Wednesday, Thursday in 2 weeks, or does he mean like the Monday after that? You know what I mean? So, he did say it was worse than Yaramendi.
Brutal.
So yeah.
When did he pick that up in the game?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, he was lumping around a little bit at the end. I thought so.
Brutal.
I mean, they trained on Tuesday, but he wasn't out there Tuesday, so I'm pretty sure he was out from the game. But that's your first 5 choices in those 2 positions are gone. So you could, there's no Velasco to put in there. The next choice beyond those guys would be Pondeka, who hasn't played a minute with FC Dallas this year because he was hurt for about a month and a half. So he's only been back with like 3 games for North Texas. He played really well at the end of last year, and they signed him off of that. So, unless you're going to do something crazy like, Nolan Pondeka or, I don't know, Kamungo in central midfield, or, you guys can stretch just as I can to try and figure out who the heck. Carl Sante, I think, is very viable as a 6, except that I don't like him there in the future. I like him as a center back. I don't really want him to be a 6, even though you could use him as a 6. But Nolan's supposed to be a 6. So maybe it's time for Nolan to get a start. He had a weekend off because he had 5 yellow cards in MLS Next Pro, so he should be fresh. If Nolan and Delgado together looks more like Frazier and Delgado together, and then you could keep Siki up high if you like that combination better. Whatever you think works better. But at this point, I don't think coach knows, because I was watching training and he was rotating people in and out and trying different combinations, trying to figure out what the hell he's going to do. And they had like 4 players up from North Texas.
Did he throw Peter Lucene in there as a center mid for the hell of it?
Yeah. Tanner Humphrey was up today. Ennis Solly, Nolan Norris was there, of course. Diego Garcia, Thomas Pondeka. Those 5 guys came out from North Texas basically in order to try and fill up a roster, because Corchia's still out. Legett's back, but they didn't want to press him hard, so he was in and out of training. But he's just training full speed and everything. So it's kind of a mess, man. It's especially because they're getting hit all at one particular spot. Those double midfield spot. I'm not even sure if you wanted to rotate back out to a 4-3-3 if it would help you, because then you wouldn't have the 8s that you would need. I mean, you got plenty of 6s, but who's going to play as an 8? You're still missing all those same people, so it's rough.
You're getting even away from dudes. You're just getting down to the people that you would refer to as just dudes.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, we were just complaining about the kids never get to come through anymore. Well, now there's so many injuries that you're going to get some kids now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm all for that. Hey, if Norland's picking up yellows, why don't you go pick one up while you're kicking somebody from Houston on Saturday?
Kick Hector Herrera back out of the game. That'd be good. I mean, Houston had a midweek game too, so they'll be a little tired. And Herrera just came back from injury, so maybe they might even rotate him. Possibly, that would be exciting because he had a bomb of a goal in the last game. But you can just see the problems, and we know this coach doesn't love the kids, so that's what makes me think that it'll be like Delgado, Siki rather than Nolan, So true time will tell. I mean, it's going to be an interesting question, and everyone can play around with it, try and figure out yourselves how the heck do you put a team on the field when you're missing that many players from one spot. It's tough.
Buzz, I wanted to ask this question because I feel like this is not something exclusive to Dallas or just even MLS teams in general, but the number of injuries of players this season and dating back to last season, just my perception is that it is greater than normal, like higher than normal. And I wonder if you have any opinions as to is that any sort of, what's the right word, indictment of this particular coaching staff and training staff, or is it just bad luck, a mixture of those things?
Well, you remember that the first season under Nico, they got really lucky, or did really well with health and fitness, and everybody was really healthy, and they did really well in the standings as a result. I think that the injuries have been a little heavier the last season or two than you might like, and particularly it's been in some really important positions. But if you go look at the injury report for most of the teams in the league, and most of them have, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys out. I mean, Houston has 4 guys on there. Inter Miami has 6 guys on there. Minnesota has 5. Montreal has, good Lord, 8. Wow. Nashville's got 5. So Orlando's got 5. It's just, Real Salt Lake has 7. It just depends on your club. Like Seattle and Portland are both getting wrecked with injuries. It's just the nature of getting through the league. The trick is it important players or not? Are they long-term or not? Is it all the same position or not? Those are the things that really kill you. You want to have, they went out this year and they added a couple of depth pieces. They brought Jimmy back at a really good number. They brought Omar Gonzalez in at a good number. They kept Siki. They kept Corcho when maybe we thought we would get some more kids in there or whatever, in order to have these bodies available to get through some of these games. Well, this is going to be one of those games. This is going to be a body game. If you want to get really crazy, you can think about maybe you bring Omar as a center back and put Sam Junke in the midfield. He's a pretty versatile guy. These are the kinds of things you have to do when you get these rut injuries like it is. So while it has been a little bit bigger than you would like, it's more about who it's been. Losing Velasco, losing Jesus, losing Yaramendi like you are,
Paxton.
The Paxton like you have a lot. It's high played important players that are the one that's really killing you. If you lose Nolan Norris for 3 months, who cares? We love Nolan Norris. You lose Tariq Scott for a season. Of course, we're worried about him long term, but what does that do to your first team? Nothing, right? It's about who it is and what position they play.
So in Houston on Saturday at 7:30, and then they got to hustle back and get on a plane and travel to Tampa Bay to play in the stadium, literally on the bay of Tampa, against the Rowdies in the U.S. Open Cup next round. And considering all of the injury situations and just having to play an Open Cup game on the road and all of the intangibles tied to that, and the wackadoodle green and yellow hoop jerseys that'll cause you eye soreness.
Awesome brand. Dallas was lucky enough not to have a midweek game this week because they're going to go Saturday, Tuesday. That's a quick turnaround when you're missing all these people. So, between those 2 games, you're going to need to play some guys like Nolan Norris, like Carl Sante, like Omar Gonzalez probably. Some of, maybe even some of these forwards we don't see a lot of, like Bernie. Maybe you have to get a start in here somewhere. Because if you're going to run like they did the previous time they had the cup game where they kind of rotated a little bit out for Toronto in order to maximize the cup game. And remember, Coach said that they're all in on the cup because they can win 5 games and win some silverware. So they'll probably put more emphasis on the cup than they will on Houston. Okay, so now are we rotating in Houston? Goodness. It's going to be interesting to see. But don't undersell Tampa. They scored 6 goals in their last cup game against Birmingham. And they have Aaron Guillen, who's a former FC Dallas homegrown. He's their captain. They have Eddie Munjoma, who you remember was a college homegrown a couple of years ago. And they have Cal Jennings, who's a former draft pick under Lucci that they did not keep. And I was furious about, and he's been banging in goals ever since. So they got plenty of Dallas connections. It'll be a fun game. That's a tough place to play, in a cup when they're going to be up for it and they're going to be going guns blazing and you're all banged up. It's going to be a tough one, honestly.
I wish we had time for a whole conversation about the MLS USL gap of quality and differences started by the was it the Ben Olsen quote? I think it was after they lost in their cup game, but maybe we'll save that for another episode.
Sure.
Anything else from training today before we move on to other topics at the hand?
I don't really think so. I think that's about it. It was pretty clear that he's searching for answers and trying to figure out what the heck he's going to do. Because I saw lots of rotations of personnel combinations, trying to figure out, can this guy go with that guy? And he was moving bodies in and out quickly. Mm-hmm. They were even doing situations where they were pulling a guy off and leaving the team shorthanded for a few minutes. Kind of that kind of reaction, which I think is probably a reaction in parts of the sub rule where you might have to play a man down for a minute, or the injury thing. If you don't get up fast enough, you got to play down for a minute, or those kinds of things. So, I think I covered everything really that happened. Talking to Coach, I think.
What's his mood, by the way, and his vibe?
It's pretty good. He's definitely snappier than last year in terms of he'll get on a guy really quickly, much more quickly than last year. He won't tolerate people clowning around, not paying attention like he might have a little bit last year. So he's definitely tightened the screws some. But it's overall really positive. I mean, everybody still seems to be on the same page. I'm not seeing guys turn on each other. I'm not seeing guys ignore the coach yet. We see the effort in the games. So the signs that he's losing the team don't seem to be there. So that's a positive if you're in his corner. It's still a good vibe. The guys that were coming up from North Texas seem to be really happy to be there and competing. It was really nice to see Diego Garcia there, who I'm a big fan of that kid. I think he's fantastic. So he's a player for the future. But for a team that's really struggling to win games, it's surprisingly a positive training sessions. They're very active and very quick moving training sessions. They don't lollygag around. They don't waste time. So they get it out of there quick. It was pretty warm today, up into the mid 80s. So that was nice to get. They move fast at training.
All right, well, let's move on to the other piece of news, breaking news at hand. The biannual MLS Players Association salary list accidentally got leaked by the PA earlier today, and we've seen all the salaries, not just for Dallas, but for all the teams. I don't think there are any immediate shockers in terms of Dallas's salaries.
No,
Buzz.
No.
No, I think everything was pretty well known or assumed.
Well, Eugene Ansah jumped a little bit more than I was expecting. His base was what I thought when you doubled his number from last year, but his total was a little bit higher than I thought. But, that's starter money, man. He needs to be better than he is at that money.
Okay, well, hold on.
Yeah.
How in the world do we live in a world where Eugene Ansah is making almost $200,000 more a year than Asir Alaramendi?
Age, I guess. He's a forward instead of a mid. I don't know. That's a good question. It does. That's one that jumps out at you that maybe Eugene Ansah's a little overpaid or Asir's a little underpaid. Although he's not healthy.
Asir needs a better manager.
Yeah, well, he can't stay healthy, so maybe there weren't a lot of offers out there. Based on his talent, Asir and Martin Paz are both vastly underpaid. So is Nkosi Tafari. He's underpaid as well. But Eugene's money is about right for a middling forward. It's basically double what Jadir Oberon's was, so he's got a pretty good agent.
Yeah.
Ansah does.
And then you look at the difference between what Tafari is making and what Ibiaga is making, and that seems like totally backwards numbers.
Yeah, Tafari's got a bad deal. He's got a deal based on when he was a backup. He should have a deal based on the fact of who he is now. Obviously his next deal will be much better. It'll be the big deal of his career. When he's 27, it'll be, or 28, whatever it'll be at the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy. We're talking about Tafari being on a bad deal for him on a season where his salary went up nearly 45%.
Yeah.
I mean, that just shows how bad that initially was.
Yeah, that's crazy. Also, probably sticking out like a sore thumb, Velasco and Pomykal, both essentially $1 million players, unavailable. That hurts when you only have $4 million players on your roster.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to circle back to my idea of that they were positively offended that I even suggested that Alan Velasco be put on the season IR, because it would have opened up a DP spot and you could have added, and we've talked all season about how important it is to have your key guys performing, and they have a DP that's 0. So it's really killing them. And now they have a TAM player that's 0, and Areola, they have a TAM player who's falling off, and Legette's only been available for like 3 games. So again, this is the difference between a good team and a bad team is these things, and to eat a $1.4 million, which you had $1.4 million salary on a guy just so he could feel good about his rehab is just obscene to me. I don't get it.
And continuously, this season's greatest mystery, Enes Solly on $345,000 for a kid that can't even make the 18 regularly for the senior club.
Yeah.
Somebody explain to me how this deal got done, or what's going on, or what kind of photos somebody has of somebody.
He's a U22 initiative player, and the other U22 initiative player is Giovanni Jesus, and they're on identical numbers. So, it's only his performance that's a problem. The contract is appropriate for a U22 initiative player. The problem is the misevaluation and the fact that he's a project player that will take a couple of seasons to pay off. That's why you don't like it. The slot is appropriate. The performance is inappropriate.
Do you have any sense internally in the club, Buzz, when you talk to people that they're like, yeah, we get it. We understand why everybody's got a big question mark over their head, but trust us, this kid's going to come good at some point.
I hear that we understand why people are worried about it, but I do not get told this kid's going to come good. I actually hear some people that are like, uh-oh. We'll see. It's up to the kid, man. He's going to have to do it because it's all on him. Because even now in North Texas, he has moments that are interesting, but then he has switch-offs that are awful. It's about consistency, and he's much smaller than you would like. I mean, I know Steve Davis said he's not that small. Man, he's tiny. He's like Paul Areola size. He's a shrimp. So it's like that matters in this league, man. Now he's quick and bursty, but he's very much like a straight line guy. He's not a good combination player. Look, you got to call it like it is. I think they've misfired on this signing. In 2 years, will I be wrong? We'll see. But he does not look like a player that's going to develop into, if he was in the academy, I would not tell you to sign him. If he was an FC Dallas Academy player.
Let's put it this way. I know you're a big fan of Tariq Scott.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have not seen Solly play because I don't watch North Texas, so I don't have a sense. I don't know how similar these two players are in terms of primary positions. But compare Solly to Tariq.
I would take Tariq 10 out of 10 times. Tariq is Jeff Cunningham. That's how he plays like.
Yeah.
So he's a tall-ish, pacey, direct, decisive goal scorer. He plays a 9 wing. Solly is Colin Smith. You remember Colin Smith?
That rings a bell.
Yeah, he was the homegrown that I thought shouldn't have been a homegrown. They tried to make him an outside back.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why when I see Solly, I think, man, make that guy an outside back. That's what I don't see a player that I think is going to be a player. Now, I could be wrong. Within the last 3 years or so, they've made academy signings that I don't understand, that don't jive with my evaluation of players. They're about to sign another one that doesn't jive with my evaluation of players. That doesn't mean that they're wrong. I think I got a pretty good eye. How
often, but over that course of time, how often have you been right on your evaluation of those signings that you didn't think should have been signed?
Well, I was right about Regic and Colin Smith. I thought Nolan should be, and I thought Turk Scott should be, so that both of those look good so far.
Yeah.
I tend to think my evaluations are pretty good. So I watched Enes Solly, and I'm not seeing it. Now, again, I'll give him time. It's like Cobra, right? For Cobra sucked. And then 7 months later, all of a sudden he came good. So we'll see with this Sid Colley.
And then he wanted to go home.
But Solly is from Canada, so it's not like he's going to want to go home. So he's a dogged player, and he's aggressive, and he fights and he claws. But it's like I just don't see enough refinement as this league gets better.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything
else about the salary list that we want to discuss?
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I think it's interesting in the greater context of where the league is going. Logan Farrington was a pre-draft signing, a senior coming out of college, pre-draft signing. Historically speaking, those guys that were pre-draft signings ended up having to be on the senior rosters because they would be getting $150,000, $200,000 a year. They were getting longer term, like 3+2 kind of deals. Farrington just got that college 1+1+1+1 $70,000 that like Nkosi did when he got drafted. So like he didn't get any larger benefit for being like the one senior that the league signed ahead of the draft. So to me, that's an indication of a greater changing landscape involving the league and what they consider the draft to be worth. So it's not noteworthy for Logan because he's one of the best senior forwards I've seen come out of college in like decades in terms of how good he is coming right out of school. It's only fascinating in terms of the changing landscape of what they're paying a 4-year senior player. It just doesn't pay to play college soccer 4 years, man. It doesn't. Not if you want to be an MLS pro.
I wanted to sort the sheet real quick that you sent over because I wanted to look at something in terms of money. Obviously, Mr. Messi at $20 million is number one. What was the other one? I was shocked to see Driussi is in the top 5 at 6.7. I know he had that one baller season for Austin, but man, that seems like a lot of money for that cat.
He's very inconsistent, isn't he? Yeah.
Great assist the other day, though.
I mean, when he's on, he is phenomenal. But then it's like half the time he's not on.
Yeah.
It's like Reynoso in Minnesota. Reynoso, when he was on, was unstoppable, but then he doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Goes on vacation or whatever.
Holy cow. Walker Zimmerman on 3.5.
Yeah, there's only 2 or 3 center backs that are on the can't buy them down DP level, and Zimmerman's one of them. It's a very rare commodity.
Okay.
That thing.
Anything else about the list that we want to get into?
I didn't look at it other than Dallas.
Yeah, it just came out a little while ago. Yeah.
Dante Sealy on 300,000 is a problem.
I was surprised Emma Tuamasi's size he is.
That's
363.
That's we'll look at Farfan at 500. So 363 is like key player, not full-time legit starter, but that's kind of like in and out squad player. Whereas Dante Sealy should be down by like Carrera and Delgado, because he's developing. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, it's what you expect from FC Dallas, right? Middle of the pack, spending's up 10% year on year. Couple of reductions. Jimmy Mauer took that kind of hybrid staff role, so he went down from 300 grand to under 100, and then Ahmet Korsha got bought back on a like $15,000 reduction from his previous contract. But good to see Paul Areola's not going up from last year, given his lack of production.
I guess my last comment would be that I thought Musa was going to be higher.
I did too, and my other one is when they said that Omar gave the club a friendly deal. Holy cow, they did! I mean, 89 base and 114 tops. That's ridiculously low for a player of his.
He took a developmental roster money, which is like 18-year-old kid money, just because he wanted to play here. So,
living the life, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I think he wanted to come home, so
Yeah, and get paid $100,000 to sit on the bench for the most part.
We shouldn't sniff at $100,000, right? I mean, that's great money for 99% of us. But in terms of big time soccer player with his resume, that's nothing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on. Since we last talked, the rumor that we discussed last week came true. Buzz attended the session. We now have a women's professional team here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area playing at the Cotton Bowl, and the branding was revealed: Dallas Trinity FC. Buzz, you were there at the scene, and Dan, you've been following this all along. What do you guys think?
I was surprised how many people were there. I thought it was going to be kind of a small media thing, but there was a couple hundred people down there downtown. They had some free food and some scarf giveaway, and there were some fans. The brand is pretty good. I think it's a good color. It's one that doesn't get used in Texas, I don't think, by anybody. So I like it because it's maroon. The combination with the gold is good, I think. I actually liked the scarf better because it was more maroon and tan than it was maroon and gold like some of the other stuff. But Dan says that has to do with how you print scarves. Their TDs that they announced there, they've since announced them officially, but they announced them there and introduced them to everybody. So I don't know why they did that. But
the GM,
yeah, the GM, he's got a resume of having coached UT and SMU here in town, so he knows all the academy coaches and coached at Notre Dame. Coached in the NWSL,
the Red Stars, yeah,
the Red Stars. So he's good, solid resume. So,
but he's not the manager.
No, he's going to hire a manager. I talked to Charlie.
Neil,
thank you, Charlie Neal. He seemed very intelligent, seemed to know exactly what he's talking about. Wasn't struggling to come up with answers. I would ask him a question about, hey, what about this? And he'd be like, oh yeah, here's that, blah, 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 blah. I mean, he seemed dialed in, knew what he was talking about. They've got a good plan, it sounds like, in terms of incorporating the local academies and trying getting involved with them. So the struggle will be getting a team on the field. And one of the interesting questions for them that they have to decide is that, do they load up a full roster at the start of the season, or do they wait? Because the NWSL will end, a month and a half into their season. And because they don't have a draft when the college season ends, should they leave a little room so that they can pick up out of contract NWSL players or some of these college kids that when their fall season ends, do they leave a little room for that and maybe not go full roster to start of the season? So that's a tough question for them to answer. And that'll be the interesting thing to watch as they go forward, other than hiring a coach. So what do y'all think of the brand?
I hate the logo, honestly. But most people seem to like it, so I'm happy to defer on that. I love the color scheme. The name is great. Don't know why they used FC, but Trinity is a fantastic name. It's not a typical soccer name, which is nice.
No, I said this on the radio show on Saturday. The thing about the name that really struck me is that, like many of us, I've spent a lot of time in my life contemplating what I would name my soccer team when I won the lottery and put a team together. And I've come up with all different kind of ideas for a team in Dallas, and Trinity never dawned on me as an option. And I think it's actually a really interesting idea for a name. I also hate the performative use of FC in there. I think it sounds stupid. It also ruins their logo or it hurts their logo in many ways. But I'm a big fan of the color scheme. I think that's great. The other comment I had was I appreciate the attempt to do something different artistically with a cliche use of a Pegasus in a Dallas brand. So instead of just the typical Art Deco version of a Pegasus, they tried to do something very different with it. And then tried to tie it to the different tributaries that feed the Trinity and all of that. The unfortunate part of it is that when I first saw it, I wanted to know why the horse was pregnant, because that's what it makes it look like, is the horse is pregnant. So other than that, I like it. I got a ton of questions about the Cotton Bowl, though, because all of the reports from people who are familiar with the, offered to, with some of the insides in this, is that the Cotton Bowl was not the plan. They had other options. I've heard that they were talking about playing at Choctaw Stadium. I had heard that they had talked at other facilities, not in Dallas County. And so I wonder, because of the deal that the city council signed, essentially paying for Trinity's use of the Cotton Bowl for 2 years, how much of this is tied to an initiative within the city of Dallas to attract women's sporting professional teams? Because remember, it's not. I don't think it's a coincidence that a week prior to the announcement of this, the city of Dallas announced that the Dallas Wings WNBA team is moving to downtown Dallas to play at the new convention center.
Oh, it's not a coincidence at all, because the mayor was the first person that talked, and I took a picture of it and put it up online, and immediately some spin doctor commented on my photo calling him the sports mayor. And he proceeded to get up there and talk about their whole huge initiative of bringing pro teams to Dallas. And he talked about the Wings. He talked about this one. And he said, and there's more to come. Like, he's got a whole agenda going in terms of like bringing pro teams to Dallas or back to Dallas.
Yeah, I've heard on more than one occasion there are people running around making the suggestion that FC Dallas and the city of Dallas have had conversations of some shape, form, or otherwise. Now, I don't believe it, but I've heard that story pissed around before.
Well, I will tell you that there was a very brief pause in the planning for the stadium reno, but I think that pause has now gone by and they're back on track. It did cause them to reorder, I'm told, some of the like what part's going to get knocked down first and when it's going to happen. But I can't help it, Peter. But now that you say that, I wonder if maybe the Dallas called and was like, hey, well, hold on. Can we do that? I think we know enough about the lease that we know that like they can't move out of there because there's something about, they have to provide another MLS team or the next highest thing. Like, it's really complicated out.
There's nothing money couldn't resolve. Like, there's, of course. Absolutely in any world, somebody could pay Frisco and the school district and whoever else associated enough money to get them to go, yeah, that's okay. We'll just use this as a high school stadium and concert venue from here on forward. It does make you wonder what's going on. I also find the use of the Cotton Bowl for a soccer club, which obviously is going to go nowhere near close to maximizing the seating capacity, but also happening while the Cotton Bowl is under construction, I find very unusual and janky, to use a favorite word of mine.
Yeah, they mentioned that. They said that they will just be using basically like half of the stadium, and working around the construction.
Just half the field?
Yeah. Well, and I asked Charlie, too. I was like, do you see the Cotton Bowl as being a viable long-term solution? And he said, well, the market's going to dictate that. He said, how good we do will tell us whether we can continue to use the Cotton Bowl. He said, probably in the long room, I'm paraphrasing, but, revenue control is going to matter. They did look at Choctaw. They did look at the thing down in Mansfield. They're very all in Dallas in terms of like they're going to bring a training facility to Dallas City itself. So I think that in the long run, if they do something on their own, they'll want it to be sort of in Dallas. But, I think they're keeping their minds open as they go into this process, it seems, from my conversations with them.
So are you both of you of the same impression that I am, that I was a bit surprised at what I perceived to be a general majority positive reaction to the brand, the reveal, and playing at the Cotton Bowl, in terms of reaction from the public? Did you guys pick up on that too, or did you get a different?
I got the same exact vibe as when the Fort Worth Vaqueros launched. Oh, yeah, what a really cool brand. It's so fresh. It's so different. It's a big alternative to FC Dallas, not in Frisco. But then no one showed up.
Yeah.
And, they're talking about a 12,000 average attendance target. And
man,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that I hope they do really well. I just think that's really ambitious for a league that hasn't launched yet.
There definitely was a good vibe at the presentation. Lots of city leaders, lots of people there. The people that are in the Cotton Bowl district, like their city councilman, was really pushing hard apparently for this thing. I think the 12,000 has got to be the where they kind of got to try and get to. Like if they're drawing like 2,000 or 3,000, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to compete Division I, compete with NWSL. You're going to have 10,000 plus. So I understand that ambition. There's a lot of people that responded with, "Yeah, great, it's close by. I'm excited. I'm going to get tickets. I'm in." We'll see. They're going to have to do it. It's on them.
It was interesting. I got a lot of really positive reaction, and then last night was out at Spectrum at my Tuesday night beer league games, and a lot of the guys that I play with and from the other teams are like, I can't believe they're playing in the Cotton Bowl. Who wants to sit in that place and I just thought that's interesting reaction. I was like, where would you want them to play? And they said there's 100 high schools, really nice high schools in this town. Why aren't we playing in a more appropriately sized stadium? And I thought to myself, would you actually go watch would you be more likely to go watch this team play at like Highlands Stadium or Highland Park or wherever in the Dallas specific area? The stadium over on Hillcrest with Hillcrest High School or something like that versus going to the Cotton Bowl. And I honestly don't know.
Isn't it the same hypothetical as when people talk about FC Dallas and Frisco? Oh, they'd get so much more attendance if they played in Dallas. Okay, but would you attend it because you don't attend in Frisco now? Well, no, I wouldn't, but someone else would.
Yeah.
I think, Peter, that you hit it on the head earlier when you talked about the city of Dallas taking on a lot of the costs. I think the Cotton Bowl would not make sense if they had to pay for it all.
That's massive, yeah, because the Cotton Bowl is more expensive than Toyota Stadium.
Yeah, I think that probably sealed the deal for the Neal family. Boy, I just made a rhyme. Is that they don't have to pay for it, and it's probably a good holding thing until they can figure out if they got to build their own. Yeah. Their own stadium.
Well, when I was talking to Charlie about the process of how they ended up at the Cotton Bowl, and he talked about some of the places they looked, and like, I'm not going to go through them all, but like some of them, he was like, well, that place has a track, which we weren't interested in. That place has, this kind of problem, or that kind of problem. So they're well aware of all of these economics and what they understand, and I don't think you could undersell the idea that like, because we didn't hear squat about this really until all of a sudden they're in front of the city council. Can we get this deal done? And they said at the presentation that this thing was a long time in the works. He said like a year and a half they've been talking to the city of Dallas, and yet I know they were talking to all these other possible venues as possible places to play. And really, the Cotton Bowl wasn't done until they got that support from the city. And without that, they really wanted to be in Dallas. And you and I, Peter, we've heard about some of these other stadiums that got proposed. It might still be where they go to places in the long term, but nobody wants to be in a high school stadium. That won't be it. But they looked at SMU's football stadium. They looked at the soccer stadium over at SMU, which has the track. That's the one now that I remember that he did say that they couldn't do that because of the track. There's lots of places you could do it. None of them provide a first class professional vibe. And remember that they do have a D1 status. They have to have a certain size stadium. They can't go play at a 1,000 seat stadium.
Yeah. Well, Ford at SMU would have been an interesting option, but I don't think SMU can do that. I think they've got remember back
they have
in
an
the
event
day,
limit. Yeah.
They have an event limit with the city of University Park. So,
and they have a noise limit, and they have the number of fans limit, and they have a drinking on campus limit. It's like there's a whole bunch of reasons why none of these things are going to work for them, and would work for soccer. And some you just can't just say, oh, just go play at a high school. Not in Division I. If you're in PSL, play at a high school.
Well,
Division One.
But to be clear, there's some pretty kick-ass high school stadiums in North Texas that would qualify for Division I.
Allen, not Dallas.
Right.
In Dallas.
Yeah. I think that big stadium that the DISD plays in down is probably 15,000.
No, that might work. I don't know where that is.
I think it's down in South Dallas, the one that like South Oak Cliff and Skyline and all those teams play at.
Yeah. Is it turf?
It is. Yeah, they're all turf.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, I guess.
Does that have a track?
But if they were going to play at Choctaw, that's turf too. They were. Yeah. That was like number one on their list until the city of Dallas came.
Approached them.
Yeah. It was in their business plan, Buzz. So I think it was. Anyway, my point being is I can't figure out if the Cotton Bowl is a good idea or a bad idea. I love that venue. It rings true to me. I think it's an interesting idea. But remember, when the Burn played in the Cotton Bowl, it was a 76,000-seat facility. In 2024, it's a 92,000-seat facility. And the Burn used to pull, on a regular basis, 15,000 people, and it felt like an absolute, cavern.
Yeah.
It's just going to be – it'll be interesting to see how they make it work. And that we haven't even begun talking about the quality of – the league in terms of players, because it is not an infinite player pool of quality. And I think for a team that hasn't hired a manager and is still trying to find players, and they're 3 months away from kicking off the season, it's going to be Andy said this on the show when we were talking about this. When they finally got the green light to launch the burn, they were 9 months out from the start of the MLS season, and they struggled to put a team together. They don't even have that. They got 3 months to make this happen.
Well, they are down the road some amount with a coach. He wouldn't tell me how far, but it wasn't ground zero. So hopefully they're going to have somebody announced soon, because you're right. They got to put a team on the field in 3 months, and they don't have a single player or coach signed. So they're going to have to move quick. And I'm with you. I have reservations about how much talent's going to be available. You're going to see a lot of young players, I think, in the beginning, because they can have 5 amateur players on their roster. They have special allocations for that. And that doesn't include college players, though, because college players would lose their eligibility. So it's going to be high school age kids. So you're going to see your Jaden Shaw's coming through with them, which is why they're going to tap into some of these academies pretty aggressively, I think, because they'll want to get some of the very best players from Solar and FC Dallas to come over there and play some of their games.
Well, one thing they've got to consider is they have to put an academy of their own together. So kind of tapping into those academies, making that hey, play U18, play U19, come to us. That's what they have to do, and in a less aggressive way than FC Dallas has historically done.
He clarified for me, Charlie did, that they have to field a team with their brand on it in a certain number of very specific tournaments. And so he wasn't sure that they were going to actually start a full-blown academy out of the gate, that they just might borrow players for those particular tournaments, and that they were working on those kind of relationships to try and, because I think they don't want to go scorched earth and do what FC Dallas did and burn all those relationships.
Yeah,
they'd be better off pulling in a couple of girls for to play in their games when they can, and then pulling together a few for these little all-star sort of team-ish moments, rather than actually just going out scorched earth and try competing with those academies.
The reality of that as well is, the 12,000 attendance, maybe 40% of that is going to be people who are affiliated to those youth teams. So you don't want to piss them off.
Yeah, boy, there are some lessons to be learned about how the Hunts handled the existing youth culture and structure when they decided to shove their way into it all those many years ago. There are so many lessons to be learned from that, and I'm sure the Neal family are highly familiar with that. So keep an eye on it. I don't know. I am rooting for this. I think the branding's great. I love the idea. I think it's cool that there are now 2 professional women's teams in Dallas proper. I think that's going to be outstanding. But, man, they've got a tremendous amount of lift they've got to do on liftoff, and they've got an incredibly short runway. And you do begin to wonder how much of the old adage about you only get to make the first impression one time is going to come into play when it comes to opening day or the first opening weeks of the season for this team.
And on a kind of a league level as well, started the player signings have started trickling through. Obviously, the standard isn't NWSL. It's players who maybe are in their 30s and played like 20, 30 games, or early 20s who filled in the last World Cup as amateur players or temporary signings. One player that interested me, and for a local perspective, is Riley Mattingly Parker, former Solar striker. Went to Alabama, was a Mac Herman Trophy finalist. She was drafted by Angel City for whatever reason. No, she wasn't drafted by Angel City. Sorry, I'm thinking of a different player that was. I can't remember where she went now, but just didn't necessarily work out for her with NWSL. She went on loan to Tigres last year. They did a 1-on-1 contracts, wasn't renewed. So kind of a player who really started to peak in college age, didn't get a lot of love from the US youth teams, who could do some decent stuff. And, it's one of those local interest players, which, for me, Dallas Trinity has to sign someone of a local interest, whether that's like a Trinity Byers or Lexi Massimo, or bring Madison Haley back over from Brighton, or just someone where there's some name value and that link, right? That someone playing for FC Dallas or Sting or DKSC or Solar, they can see their progression into the semi-pro and professional ranks.
Man, it's going to be fascinating to watch this, and it is fun because it, for those of us that were around at the beginning of the burn, it does have that a slightly familiar smell to it of being thrown together. All right, interesting. Well, go Trinity, yay! What else do we want to talk to before we shut this thing up? What is going on? Is somebody moving?
That's my dog.
Oh,
trying to join the podcast. Say hello.
Hi.
You want to say hello?
Hi,
yeah,
dog.
he's trying to climb up onto the desk.
Aw, how old is the dog?
I actually don't know because he's from a pound, but he's been here 3 days, and Amy just left to go to a showing, and now he's a little apprehensive that she left. So he was coming over here looking for reassurance. So
is it a puppy or is it an adult dog?
it's not a puppy. He's not a puppy, but I don't know how. He's somewhere between 1 and 6. They said. I think it's probably closer to 1 or 2, but not a puppy. So, but he's
Don't get that Embark DNA test done.
Yeah, well, we gotta follow up wellness check on Monday with the vet and see what she says.
All right, blue-eyed.
I don't know. The vet? No, I don't know what color her eyes are. Well, the dog's got
No,
eyes.
the dog.
The vet's an Aggie. I want to make sure of that.
Of course, it's an Aggie.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah. The other thing we want to talk about is I want to hear Dan talk about Texoma's new GM, TD, whatever he is, that's from Luton.
Yeah, Texoma FC named Adrian Forbes as the technical director. A bit of a surprise for me personally. He'd just announced his departure from Luton Town like a week or two prior as the head of player development and coaching. So, a really fancy way of saying he oversees the academy. As a player, played for Norwich, Luton, Blackpool, Swansea. Started his coaching career at Norwich with the academy, moved to Luton, worked his way up. He was obviously instrumental in a few players that have played in the Premier League for both Norwich and Luton over time. Seems a really good get as a League One development area. Texoma obviously trying to take advantage of the north of DFW and Oklahoma, where it's not too much MLS attention. It'll be interesting to see, firstly, why Texoma, but
yeah, that's that's the question I would think everybody's asking. Why would you? I mean, I know Luton, Dan. No offense, isn't exactly L.A. or anything.
Oh no, it's a shithole.
How in the world do you end up leaving a Premier League club or Championship club to go GM a club playing in the American 5th tier? Is it, Buzz?
No, 3rd, USL 1.
Oh, it is USL 1. Okay,
yeah,
3rd tier.
Same
okay.
as North Texas SC.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first thing that I kind of thought of is, if he's, in a senior role in the academy and kind of not pushing on to first team, and maybe those opportunities just aren't there. So a change of scenery. I think he just got married in the last year. May just be, opportunity, a bit of a change of lifestyle. Even if it's Sherman, it's still 45 minutes north of, an hour north, I guess, of the center of an 8 million population metropolitan area with a ton of stuff to do and crazy hot summers, which we English people really love until we actually experience them. No, I'm actually looking forward. I know Corey is our person for Texoma FC, but I definitely want to have a try at maybe popping up there and having a sit down with Adrian and a chat about things between the two places as kind of a uniquely placed individual for that.
Yeah. I was just looking at the little presser they have, and his comment about 5 years at Luton, it was going to take something special to get him away from there. And then he goes on to talk about the World Cup coming here and how there's an expected explosion of growth, and he really bought into the project they're trying to put together. So a lot of your basic coaching talking points, but it's another spin back to the idea that there's an explosion going to come from this FIFA World Cup that we're getting here. And people thinking there's a real opportunity. They cited that too with the city of Dallas, both the mayor and the Niels, as they were talking about the Dallas Trinity project. We're talking about the explosion that they're expecting from the World Cup, and then perhaps the World Cup for the women that the U.S. is after in the next cycle or two after that. So, there's a lot of people looking at this window here from this next World Cup over the next 3 or 4 years. It'll be fascinating to see how many of them get it right.
And when do they start? Texoma?
Next season, they're going to start. They told us, so we'll see. And they claim that they're going to build a stadium of their own. Right now, they're using that college stadium that's right there off of the 75 as it goes up to Sherman area.
I drove past Bearcat Stadium the other day. It was pissing down with rain. Or I would have taken a photo to send to some Luton people to say, "Hey, it's Adrian Forbes' new home."
Oh, interesting. All right.
I'm just interested to know how that link happened. Like, was it somebody knew somebody? Seems very random, right? If you're Texoma, you're probably not. Luton Town's academy guy. We want him. And if you're Adrian Forbes, you're probably not like, yes, I want USL League One. I want Texoma specifically.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that Texoma FC on the soccer radar is a very, very, very light blip, unless for some reason you listen to Third Degree, the podcast, because I guarantee you, if you were to take a survey in the general Dallas-Fort Worth area of anybody, even in soccer circles, about Texoma FC, it would grade out extremely low. So how some dude in Luton, England found out about it as an opportunity is got to be a fantastic story.
Yeah, maybe Dan can pry it out of him if he gets to the interview.
Yes,
that'd be fun.
That would be great. All right. Well, hey, look, new stuff, new shiny soccer stuff for us to be excited about. And it comes as a good time as our main soccer thing isn't so shiny currently. All right, well, here we go. We're going to have 2 games to talk about next week, Buzz. Houston on Saturday and Tampa Bay in the Open Cup on Tuesday. Anything else before we go?
Yeah, quick shout out to Steele Cook, who's got an awesome name, and he had an assist today for the US U15s in the tournament they're playing in.
Do we need to have a tournament for most kick-ass FC Dallas Academy product names of all time? I think up there, you got Paxton Pomacall, you got Knight Pickering, you got Steele Cook. Who else? There's another really kick-ass kid's name that you've told me about before that I can't think of.
I'm hard to say.
I have to think about that. We may have to put a bracket together with people.
Caucaskaben's a pretty good one.
Julian Eyestone isn't bad.
Julian Eyestone's pretty good.
Yeah.
This is the kid that just goes by Toro, like he's Pele or.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, he's a good defender.
Yeah. All right.
Wyatt Easterly is a pretty good one. That sounds very Texan, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
That's about it. Well is dry.
All right.
And my dog's going crazy.
Go take care of your puppy dog. Everybody go submit your names for Buzz's puppy dog in the podcast section of the Discord.
Yeah.
Everybody drop your puppy dog nickname suggestions, please. And then you'll be allowed to vote and be the deciding voters for Amy and Buzz somewhere at a date down the road. Dan, you got anything else, sir? You're being awfully quiet.
Nah.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by Soccer90.com, your source for FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear with the Copa America and Euro 24 coming up. Man, they got all the good stuff, all the big countries, all the big guns, Argentina, France, Germany, Brazil, and of course, the United States. Third Degree listener, of course, 20% off discount in store. Just mention Third Degree at checkout or online. Code Third Degree, Soccer90.com. Some exclusions do apply. Third Degree the Podcast is also brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm for wills, trusts, probates, and business law. Call 469-515-2559 or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
All right. Very good. Thank you, boys. It's always good to talk to you. Go team. Go wins. Go get some points. Go kick some open cup ass. And hopefully we'll have something good to talk about next week. Thank
Crush
you.
the orange.
Yeah. Crush the orange, as they say. And we will speak to you next week. FC Dallas Curious on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Keep the cannon.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
You sounded like you're being wrestled by a bear, Buzz.
Oh my gosh, he's going crazy because Amy left. He's over there climbing on shit and knocking over lamps. So I'm gonna go.